Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'll call to order the November 19th, 2012 meeting of the Currituck County Board of Commissioners. And I appreciate all of you folks turning out tonight. Somebody made the comment earlier that Currituck is beginning to look like 50 Days of Gray, which I think they were referring to the book that's been out recently, and wish this weather would be over, but we appreciate you turning out despite the inclement weather. We're going to lead off this evening with the invocation Pledge of Allegiance by Reverend Paul Bopp for Truth Alive Church. If you would all rise, please.
Father God, as we enter into this season of Thanksgiving, I just want to take a moment and thank you that we still live in a county where we can lift up our voice in public prayer together, Lord, especially at meetings like this. And right now, Lord, we just pray that your wisdom and your understanding will be upon each one of these board members tonight as they prepare to make decisions that will affect each person in this county. We pray that each person that comes before the board tonight will do so in an orderly, peaceful manner. And Father, we just thank you for your hand of protection that is upon this county and its citizens. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You can be seated. First item is approval of the agenda. I have one change. There's a note for outgoing comments, which we will defer until the next meeting. Any other changes, amendments to the agenda? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, agenda is approved. Next is public comment. Public comment's a period where we give anybody that has a matter to address the Board of Commissioners a moment to speak their piece on that. And I have a number of people signed up tonight. I'm going to lead off first with comment that prior to this meeting we had a work session on the Moyock Small Area Plan, which is just beginning, and Commissioner Gilbert wanted to make a few comments about that plan.
Yes, the planning department, Holly White is leading this project, and we just did an update and review with the commissioners on where we are with the Moyock Small Area Plan. The Board of Commissioners are currently reviewing the applicants that have shown some interest in the stakeholder committees, and that will be determined early January as far as the committee that's going to be sitting on that board. The Community Planning and Development is hosting a public input meeting on Thursday, December 13th at the Moyock Middle School at 7 p.m. So please mark your calendar, December 13th at 7 p.m. at Moyock Middle. This is going to be another public input meeting so that you can come in and voice and share your thoughts about the Moyock Small Area Plan. There's also more information about the plan process and the upcoming meetings available online, so please go into the Currituck website. And also, in addition to that, you can sign up for emails so that you can get email updates on how we are progressing with the small area plan. So I encourage you to go ahead and get on the website, call the planning department if you have some issues with the website or anything, but contact Holly White or Tammy Glave, and they can both assist you with that. But I encourage each and every one of you to please be present on December 13th and give us some more input. This will be a meeting where you can put in public comments, so I encourage you to be there.
Thank you. First person to have signed up is Mary Etheridge. If you'd come forward, give us your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Mary Etheridge, 846 Sharborough Road, and I'm the Director of Elections for Currituck County. On behalf of the election board members, Jeannie O., Sheila Tyler, Karen Ish, and Deputy Director Rachel Raper and myself, I would like to offer our appreciation and thanks to our nearly 100 workers who made the November 6th general election a success. We had 33 precinct officials, 17 high school assistants, and 48 election assistants who worked on Election Day from 6 a.m. to after 8 p.m. We would also like to thank our 6 one-stop workers who processed 3,333 people through our office in 12 and a half days. These dedicated workers are truly the gatekeepers of democracy, and we appreciate their hard work. 11,350 ballots were cast in the county with a voter turnout of 64%. We also appreciate the county departments that help to make the elections run smooth. As Paul Martin told me, all we do is push a button and it happens, and he was joking. We have people who help us from Public Works, Parks and Recreation to set up the polling place. The Sheriff's Department helps us, Public Information, the IT Department, the schools, and many, many other people help us throughout the election period. And we thank each one of them because without them we couldn't do it. But we would also like to thank the county commissioners and the county manager for your continued support too. Thank you.
And Ms. Kitty, obviously we appreciate all the effort you put in for running a tight ship over there too and keeping things in order for us. Thank you. Second person to have signed up is Tommy Hardison.
My name's Tommy Hardison, 112 Applewood Drive, Moyock. I want to bring up the June 18 Board Commission meeting. That's when Don Williams came before y'all to get the Phase 2 started. And matter of fact, y'all gave him permission to start his whatever he had going on. But in the meantime, you give him a condition, 90 days to complete the work. But here it is, almost 150 days, and the work is not done. So I think Mr. Woody might have something to say about this problem, because I talked to him today and the county attorney.
We took note of that, too, in the earlier work session. Thank you for your comments. Are there other people that wanted to address the shingle landing issue tonight? Public comments. Just as a preface, then, let me get Mr. Woody, if you would address the situation vis-a-vis the work that was scheduled under that permit.
When the Board of Commissioners issued a special use permit and preliminary plat approval for Phase 2 of Shingle Landing, one of the conditions included in that permit was that all the drainage improvements be made according to the original standards on the Phase 1 approval, and that all the streets be brought up to NCDOT standards so that they can be transferred to the state of North Carolina for maintenance. That was supposed to be done in 90 days. The developer was also supposed to post a performance guarantee for that. To this point, the streets in particular have not been completed. There was work done to the streets. However, DOT came out to look at those, the work that was done, and deemed that it was not acceptable for state standards, and there was additional work that needed to be done, primarily work that is lacking on the shoulders adjacent to the street. There's also some issues that exist with the railroad crossing that needs to be resolved. To this point, since that work is not done, the developer is in violation of that permit condition.
And are they being cited for violation?
Staff is prepared to move forward with a formal notice of violation and begin civil citations. That's one option, and the other option is, of course, to revoke the permit.
Okay. And Mr. McCree, you made some comment, too, about the ongoing issues related to the DOT right-of-way and the railroad crossing, I think. And
Well,
what our recourse was as far as...
just as Mr. Woody said, our recourse are those two things. We can issue notice of citation, notice of violation, which we're prepared to do in the morning, and thereafter begin issuance of civil citations on a daily basis until the issues are corrected and the permit terms are complied with, or this Board of Commissioners may initiate revocation proceedings to revoke the permit issued for the subdivision.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion on this. I'd like to propose that we revocate the permit that we've issued because they're not in compliance, and also, in addition to, can we start the citations?
They are in violation, so that can certainly begin. Now, in order to have a revocation, you would need to have a quasi-judicial proceeding,
right,
and to give notice to the public and to the developer of your intent to revoke and the opportunity for them to be heard. Thereafter, then, you can make your decision with regard to the revocation depending upon the evidence presented to you.
Okay. Can I make a motion that we put that on the December 3rd agenda and start the citations?
Well, you can request to be put on the agenda without a motion for this like that.
Okay.
So just by asking for that in the case. So I think really if we give Mr. Woody a chance to do what he needs to do to see what the situation is with that.
Does it have to be public notice, or is there enough time for that?
Yeah, we can send the notice of violation tomorrow morning, so that should be received within three business days.
With regard to revocation, I think we have enough time to give
I'm sorry. Yes,
public notice and notice to the developer.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question? Is there a waiting period of typically it's 30 days? They have a period of time to correct a problem before the fine starts? Is this something, since we have exceeded the time limit, can we start
the UDO? Some violations establish specific waiting periods. For example, overgrown lots or nuisance violations requires 30 days of notice, but the UDO does give the county some flexibility in shortening that notice period in some instances. So in my opinion, with this particular request, we could shorten the waiting period to immediately.
What is the fines per day?
Fines can be up to $500 per day.
$500 per day.
Can I ask one other question?
Go ahead.
If you revoke the permit, how do we get the work completed? Who does that? Who's responsible for completing the ditches or roads or whatever if he does not do it?
Well, I mean, you had this, and I think this is what you're alluding to. You had this very discussion at the hearing where you ultimately approved the special use permit with conditions. That was one of the issues. If the permit's not granted with conditions that he be required to comply, then who is going to be responsible for the streets? The fact of the matter is that with regard to Phase 1, the developer met the UDO requirements of turning the roads over to the homeowners association, and thus allowing under the UDO for the bond for Phase 1 to be released. Now you put the requirement that a bond be replaced by virtue of issuing the special use permit for Phase 2 and placing those conditions on Phase 2. So we have a couple of options to go forward with a notice of violation, civil citations, which can result in a lawsuit being filed by the county in court seeking a judge's order that he be required to comply with the conditions placed upon it, or you may proceed with a revocation proceeding.
Now, the reason for opening the discussion somewhat was really to make the folks here about this matter aware of what we were proceeding to do. I think if Mr. Woody proceeds with the citation that he can issue from the planning department as far as putting them on notice to what to expect, and if we add an agenda item for the next meeting related to the revocation, they'll have ample time to come and represent their case, as will any of the other folks that would be involved in the issue do that. It's not a matter of us being able to revoke the permit tonight, obviously, because we don't have any notice of that out. So that's the reason I wanted to clarify that, to make sure that you didn't get up needlessly and have to repeat over and over again like it. We are concerned about it as you are and would like to see it resolved. So if there being no other question, okay.
When we say fines can be levied up to $500, that's at the discretion of a trial judge, is it not?
No, it's at the discretion of the zoning administrator.
Yeah, but I mean, the final adjudication of it will be in front of a judge if they take it there, won't it?
Well, once we begin issuing, for example, if it is $500 per day, then that becomes a debt under law that's owed to the county. In order for us to collect the debt, we would then sue the developer to seek collection, like any party would do when they are owed monies by another.
Much like the Moyock muscle car issue. And we had those fines way up there and ended up not being, what, 15, 20% of what the fines were?
Actually, we in that case, we had a settlement agreement for, I think it's $78,000. What is preventing us from collecting that right now is the matter in the federal courts in Virginia.
But
Can I ask one last question?
Sure, go ahead.
Mr. Rohr, what specifically is left to be done? That is not in. You said the roads,
Shoulders on the roads. There's some minor ditch work and drainage work that needs to be done close to some individual lots. The railroad crossing needs to be resolved. I don't think it makes sense to add more lots to a situation that already
Well, what's
may
the
be
issue
problematic.
with the railroad?
Yeah.
The railroad issue is there's a license or agreement between the developer and the railroad company that allows that railroad to be crossed, and there's a fee, about a $4,000 fee that must be paid annually to keep that license valid. In theory, if the fee's not paid, then the railroad company, I suppose, could block access over the railroad crossing.
As was pointed out, though, that's not a matter for the county, though.
But yeah, that's not a county issue. But I will say the NCDOT, as part of their acceptance, can accept that crossing into the railroad division of the Department of Transportation. Then that takes the burden away from the developer or the HOA. So what it makes sense to do is, if the roads are turned over to the state, to have that railroad crossing also reviewed and included in that turnover. But the last thing, the railroad crossing, the shoulder work, some minor drainage improvements, and then from a private side of things, there are some mailboxes and other things. Stop signs need to be installed, street signs, and then there's some mailboxes that need to be removed from what will be the DOT right-of-way. But I don't think the county certainly has any ability to enforce the mailbox locations in the right-of-way.
Well, I think the pressing issue is somebody needs to figure out how we're going to get there. Somebody needs to resolve this railroad issue. I know if I lived in that subdivision, I come along there and they had it blocked off, I'd be out.
And didn't the county pay that at one time?
No.
Who was?
This is, the developer is responsible for that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Mr. Martin.
Speaking to several people who live in Shingle Landing, they do not want to accept the homeowners association because of this, that they are going to be liable for the upkeep of those roads, and if the state does not take them over, then they are going to be burdened with paying the railroad assessment as well as keeping those streets open. And please remember, we have a boat ramp at the end of their community that is open for common use, and if they are forced to maintain the roads, then they have been privatized as much as we did over on the beach. And as far as I'm concerned, they could close them. So there are certain things that we really got to look at here.
Okay. Well,
There is a nursing home,
Hold it.
which could
Okay.
be part of it.
Point of order.
But
Point of
there's
order. Look.
just a lot of things there that, that they are faced with. And I think that in good faith, the developer ought to go ahead and pursue this so that the state can take those streets over, so the homeowners association are not burdened with them.
Okay, point of order. The comment period really is for public comment. We're not hearing the case of Shingle Landing tonight. That'll be on a future agenda item. The railroad crossing, although it's a matter of great concern to all of us, is not a county matter. That's not something we can do anything about. That should be addressed in the determination as to whether or not some action should be taken vis-a-vis the developer at whatever hearing might come up at a subsequent meeting. That's what Mr. O'Neill was addressing for that.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just ask one.
No, Mr.
I hate to disrupt, but my only point is that if this is not paid by
Come forward,
December
please.
1st,
Are you,
these fees.
your name and address, please.
I'm sorry, my name is Terry Wadley, and I live in Shingle Landing,
Right.
103 Creekside Drive. And I have in front of me an email of some correspondence one of my neighbors had with the people from the railroad, and it states that if these fees are not paid by December 1st, they can block our road. That's the only way in and out. I have a neighbor who's expecting a baby any time now. What if that baby, she goes into labor, and there's a block crossing our road? We can't pass it. There's a nursing home. Those people become ill. How can emergency vehicles get in or out? God forbid there's a fire. And they have a block crossing the road? That's a county issue as well, I would think. Also, there's the matter that apparently the county was given a person to speak to years ago about this. So there's been several years at which there's been time to get this matter under control, and yet it's still not under control. So he's trying to dump it on us. I have a packet full of papers that were going to be, or that have been, put in by Hyman Roby or Old and Company, and they're trying to move forward with other projects and other phases, and he hasn't finished with what he started in our development. And yet he's going to go on and continuously put money in his pocket when we're just trying to get access. I think that's, kind of sad, and we said we weren't going to let him do. We stood before you people before and asked for help. You said you were going to help us, and we just want to know what's going to happen.
Thank you, Ms. Wadley. Mr.
Can I ask
would
one
you
question,
like to address
please?
that matter? The railroad issue, as far as what we are able to do and not.
Well, again, the railroad issue is, as we have discussed, between the developer and the railroad at this. Well, I say the developer. That's who the agreement is apparently with at this point. However, again, as we understand, the developer has turned the roads over, conveyed them to the homeowners association. So it appears that it may well be the homeowners association that would be the party responsible for making some kind of accommodation with the railroad relative to the crossing.
Does the assisted living pay anything towards that railroad fee?
I do not know. I do not know to what extent, under the restrictive covenants, those commercial properties at the beginning of the subdivision are part of the association and part of the fee assessment structure.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Etheridge.
Being Mr. Martin brought up about the boat ramp, that's owned by the state of North Carolina, WRC. I would recommend we contact WRC and have the state attorney general's office get involved into this because it affects one of their facilities. Bring them on board.
Mr. Chairman, I have just one more comment. Very simply, it might be a railroad issue and a homeowner's issue, but it's a public safety issue. Our first priority in Currituck County is life and property and the public safety of our residents. So if that is impacted, then I feel it's incumbent upon us to do everything we can to ensure that we are taking care of our duties. So whatever we can do, I don't know what we can do. The legal aspect of things seems muddy, but whatever we can do, we certainly, as Mr. Etheridge just submitted, whatever agencies that we can contact to be able to help these folks out, it's incumbent upon us to do that, and that's all I have to say.
Okay, I think we're unanimously in favor of that. The simple fact of the matter is we cannot force the developer to do something other than by due process of law, which is what we're attempting to do. I'm sure we will pursue every available means to us to be able to make sure that that crossing does not get blocked. I don't know what legal recourse we have. That's going to be up to the county staff to determine that. The Board of Commissioners can't vote for the railroad company not to block the crossing, unfortunately.
Well, I'd also like to bring to your attention that many of the people that live in our subdivision are military or former military, and we have VA loans. The paperwork that I have for my VA said that the roads are public. And we have been told up till this point that they are private roads for public use. And there are 2 boxes on my paperwork, and I have the paperwork with me. And it states public and one for private. Only public is crossed. And I have seen 3 other people, and their paperwork is stated the same. And that's a federal document. And so he's selling these roads as public roads, and they're not. So wouldn't that be something that the county can also get on?
We can't make a determination that tonight. I'll let Mr. McCree address that. Those roads, when they are platted, are dedicated for public usage. The maintenance responsibility for them remains in private hands until such time as they're accepted by NCDOT. Now, how that affects the mortgage documents, I do not know. I did not complete law school, and I'm not a practicing attorney. Mr. McCree, would you like to address that?
Well, your analysis is exactly right. I mean, these under North Carolina law, counties may not maintain, operate, own streets and roads. And so we have a process in this state whereby a developer may dedicate to the public by placing such language on the plat and putting it to record that the streets are hereby dedicated to the public for public's use and access, although the streets, the underlying property on which the streets are located, may be privately owned. That is the situation at this point in time, unless and until they are brought up to state standards such that the Department of Transportation may take them over and place these streets
Exactly.
onto the state system. But they are indeed public streets. They're not publicly maintained, but they are public streets with regard to access.
Because it's not a gated community.
That's right. And they also are not delineated as private streets on the plat that was approved and went to record.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Now, I have other folks sign up. If you'd care to speak, I'd be glad to entertain your comments. But as I said, basically, I think we have an understanding what the issue is. Mary Waller is the next person that's signed up to speak.
Good evening. My name is Mary Waller. I live at 118 Creekside Drive in Shingle Landing. Because of all of this with the railroad and everything, I would like to see another way out, another road or something be put in. Because this railroad thing is, I've got a feeling this is going to go way beyond here. And we need another way out. Because if Mr. Rolls and CTX and everybody else does not pay, and we are not taking over the Homeowners Association until all of this is resolved, they are trying to pass that on to us on the 28th of this month, before the money is due to the railroads on the 1st of December. That's why they have the meeting on the 28th at the library with the management company that CTX has hired. I guess whoever is involved in that. And I would imagine they're hoping to strong-arm us into taking over the Homeowners Association. But we will not be taking that over because everything is not resolved, and we cannot afford to pay these monies that they're... It only started off as, like, I believe it was less than $2,000 a couple of years back. Now it's $4,680, I believe, to be exact, but I'm not 100%. And then there's also a $2 million plus insurance. Who is going to pay for that? Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Ms. Waller. Next person I have signed up is actually a couple, Adam and Donna Benson. You want to talk about a boat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do. Donna Benson, 104 Drum Street, Moyock. My husband, Adam.
Adam Benson, same address.
So we've been here before about this boat. We have a 30-foot jersey on the adjacent property across our canal that's been there for going on 3 years, and it is sunk. And this is my view that out my back door. And as y'all know, and I've had the county attorney come out, nobody wants to do anything about it. Nobody wants to, like, get the ball rolling to get it out of there. I don't even know if I can, like, take steps for us to remove it, because now the property is vacant. The kid that lived there, that had the boat there, that owns the house, has a warrant out for his arrest. He hadn't been seen in months. They're not behind on the taxes. I mean, come on, guys. Nobody wants to help me out.
Mr. McCree, I remember when they came forward several years ago. Three or four, two.
And we came last year.
Yeah.
But right before Easter.
For about 3 years.
I do not understand why the county cannot force the owner of that boat. It's definitely a public nuisance. It's a hazard to navigable waterways, and I do not understand why it can't be removed and the property owner assessed.
As I said, Ms. Smith and I did go out and observe it, and meet with them. I will need to speak with her because I know we talked about different methods by which we might seek to have this boat removed. I will meet with Ms. Smith tomorrow and find where we are with that, and we'll initiate a plan to get it removed from there.
We have a junk car ordinance. If somebody leaves a junk car in the yard, we go out and make it be removed. I would say a junk boat is no different than a junk car.
We have broadly interpreted the ordinance in other instances to get boats removed. Our ordinances aren't quite as clear, nor is a statute with regard to abandoned boats, but we will find a way to get that boat removed from there.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Surely.
I'm assuming the time period of leaking fluids is long gone?
I called the Coast Guard.
There's no motors, no transmissions, there's nothing in the boat.
Usually that's the first thing they look at.
It is. They looked at that when they first come out 3 years ago. But I can't believe that's legal to do something like that and leave it. If every neighbor in my neighborhood did that, you know, what would you have?
I think the county attorney has just said he will look into this a little more closely than last time.
I appreciate it. I know our problem's not like theirs, but, you know, and it isn't anyone else's problem. That's what we look at. No one else looks at it.
Well, if you have time, come on back December 3rd and let us know how that's going.
I will.
Yeah. And I'd come back here every meeting until you
can
get
count
the
on
result
it.
you're looking for.
Okay.
All right.
I appreciate
It's
it.
my Christmas present to you guys.
Thank you.
And Mr. McCree, when you get this figured out, at the same token, how about take care of this one as well?
Okay.
All right. Thank you for your comments.
It's at
Next,
the end of Ed Brumley's Wildlife Resources Commission dock. Been sitting there for 2 years. Have the same concern these folks do.
Ms. Hall, would you like to make your comments this time?
I would, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Mr. Idlet. It's good to see you here again. I just wanted to take a minute and thank the
Your
citizens.
name and address for the record, Ms. Hall, please.
Oh, wow. Denise Hall, 174 Old Drury Road, Moyock. Thank you. I wanted to take a minute and thank the citizens of Currituck County for entrusting me with their votes for the Register of Deeds position, and to ensure them that I will do everything in my power to make sure that their trust is warranted. I wanted to thank Ms. Dowdy for her service and for leaving the office in good condition. And I wanted to extend an invitation to everyone to the swearing in on December 3rd at 8 a.m. at the courthouse. I think that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. And Susan Davis.
Good evening. Susan Davis, 102 Creekside Drive. Pretty much what I like to see what we could do is put another road in our neighborhood. Originally there was talk of having a road come from the new developed north of us and coming across some land that would go across over to Moyock Landing Drive. So if anything, I'd like to see that brought back up maybe at the next meeting when we talk with the developers. Originally, I'm not sure if that road was going to be brought in from the developers north of us or if it was going to be with our developers. But I think it would be a good thing to consider. I understand the last meeting, or back in June, I think is when it was, some people were concerned about that road going through because of all the other issues in our neighborhood with the existing roads and the issues we were having. So again, I'd like to see that brought up again. It would be a great help to the community, so we won't hopefully have an issue, with getting in and out of our neighborhood. Thank you.
And we did address that when we were discussing the extension of this permit about the connectivity, because the adjacent community did not want connectivity. I was in Kitty Hawk, Kill Devil Hills recently when the bypass was closed, and noticed down about milepost 4.5, there's a community that's developed back there behind the shopping center that actually has connectivity, but they have a barricade, a movable barricade across there, so they actually can preclude connectivity but open it if need be. So there may be a possibility that we could, use an alternative form of connectivity. I would like to see, as we have as a goal or mission in the UDO, to have connectivity off the main highway between all these communities for exactly that reason, because a simple thing like an accident at that railway crossing would block that community otherwise. And I know there's some concern about the neighboring communities about who's going to maintain this, that, and the other, but public safety takes a much more important precedent than the concerns over the maintenance of the road. I think those things can get resolved civilly if need be.
Mr. Chairman, that's something, too, that we want to include in the Moyock Small Area Plan, because there's a tremendous amount of neighborhoods in the northern part of the county that is a one-way in, one-way out. So the interconnectivities amongst the neighborhoods is something that's going to be focused on also in that small area plan.
Okay. I don't have anyone else signed up for public comment tonight, but I see Mr. Snowden raising his hand over there. So I was going to ask if anybody else wanted to address the Board of Commissioners. This is the time to do so.
I didn't get here in time to sign in. I apologize for my tardiness. My name is John H. Snowden III. I live at 180 Maple Road in Maple. I'm here to address an item that's on the consent agenda because that's not one of the other agenda items that the public can comment on unless they come up in public comment. It's really great that we have number 3 there, resolution opposing the mining of uranium in Virginia. I see Virginia Beach and Chesapeake and all the cities up there are concerned about their water quality. We, as citizens in Currituck, are concerned about the water quality in Currituck Sound and Albemarle Sound and all the bodies of water around there. My family, for several generations, has been commercial fishermen on my grandfather from the southern part side, and I actually commercial fished up until my junior year in college. So I'm kind of in touch with the water, but I'm kind of disappointed that we're jumping on board with Virginia because the city of Virginia Beach and the city of Chesapeake have demonstrated a rather poor concern for our water quality. The city of Chesapeake pumps several million gallons of water a day out of the Northwest River, which affects the water quality in Currituck Sound. Now, Mr. O'Neill, Mr. Etheridge, and Mr. Islet are probably very acutely aware of that growing up here. If you didn't grow up here, the water from the Northwest River flows at such a rapid rate that river is about 30 feet deep in places. And Yates Barber, who was a biologist from this county, he actually married one of the Bounces, he wrote a paper and demonstrated that just digging the George Washington Canal, the Dismal Swamp Canal, cut off the headwaters of the Northwest River and caused an inlet that was in our Outer Banks to close. Mankind has a tremendous effect on their environment. So the city of Chesapeake pulling 5 million more gallons of water out affects the salinity in Currituck Sound. The city of Virginia Beach has an open canal to the Lynn Haven Inlet, which on a northeast wind, when the water floods in there, it dumps salt water into the headwaters of our sound through the North Landing River, which is right outside the window. That's not the Currituck Sound. Currituck Sound is south of the ferry. North Landing River is north. I remember Miss Snowden's history lessons and geography in school. So that affects Mr. Martin's bass fishing because bass don't like salt water very much. They'll take a little bit. But when you can go out here and catch flounder, black drum, and other fish out there, something's kind of wrong because we've got more salt water than we have, which means that the fresh water from the rivers are not coming down. The city of Virginia Beach also put a big old straw in Lake Gaston back in the 70s. Anybody who was here in the 70s remembers they wanted water. They ran out of water from their wells because they have problems with the groundwater up there. And they didn't want any environmental impacts or anything like that. They just wanted to put their pipeline in. And they put it in, affecting the flow of the Roanoke River into the Albemarle Sound, which affects our fishermen in the southern part of the county, which means when there's no fresh water coming out of the Roanoke River, salt water backs up into the Albemarle Sound. And that affects the menhaden and the bait fish in the Sound. That affects the striped bass that our fishermen can catch. And when you have diminished food supply for those fish and the migratory fish that go up those rivers, you affect all the fish downstream that feed on them. Virginia Beach and Chesapeake have total disregard for our water quality. So I want to know why we as a government are hitching our wagon to their horse. If we're going to hitch our wagon to their horse, we need a little payback from them to address our water quality issues. 3 of you know about that. The rest of you, I'll kind of give you the benefit of the doubt that you didn't live here. But I remember it was a really big deal back in the 70s that they wanted to take water with a total disregard to water quality issues in the water basin. And it's all interconnected. And when we start doing that, when we start disregarding that, we start having problems like what we've got out here. It's just rapid whiplash of going from nice grass beds to nothing.
Mr. Chairman,
So,
real quick,
Before we approve that resolution, I think we need to address some issues with their respect for our water quality.
We'll address the issues. I'll let Mr. Etheridge go first.
We have tried for years to address that very issue about Virginia Beach and Chesapeake taking water out. We've gone to Congress to get studies performed by the Corps of Engineers to show the degrading effect it has on Currituck Sound. But we run into problems with jurisdictional issues because Virginia Beach, Chesapeake is part of the Norfolk office of the Corps of Engineers. We fall under the Wilmington office, and they don't necessarily talk to one another. But we have tried to address those issues and gone about as far as we can go, because if we can't get the Corps of Engineers to agree to it, because that's who permitted everything, and that's who you'd have to go to revoke the permits for that type of withdrawal of water, then we're just up against it. What this resolution is trying to do, I think, is open a line of communication and a door to Virginia Beach and Chesapeake that we can start talking to one another a little bit more coherently. And I think that is something that's been expressed from the county standpoint to them. But the uranium mining, you mentioned the Roanoke River, will affect the Roanoke River quite drastically if there is a spill up there. I saw a presentation last week in Edenton on what it would do to the Roanoke River, subsequently the Albemarle Sound and Currituck Sound, if some type of catastrophic incident happens with the uranium mining. So we're doing the best we can in terms of trying to protect that long term, but we're also working in the short term to address the other issues.
And I appreciate the history. In fact, you're correct, and I think most of us understand the fact that the North River was a saltwater estuary at one point because of that inlet. It has changed its actual aquatic vegetation setup several times in the history of the settlements here, the English settlements here, and the fact that the Corps of Engineers continues to enforce upon us restrictive activities because they're protecting the environment, which they have already perturbed endless times. The preface to the resolution that we put in here makes a point to the city of Virginia Beach that we are taking the high road. We have consistently defended the quality of living for the people of Currituck County, from our continued resistance to the OLF, which we're reminding them of that, to our fact that we're willing to work with them to protect against this uranium mining danger. Very, very little likelihood from a percentage standpoint that anything would ever happen from that. But as Mr. Etheridge said, the consequences, if something does happen, would be catastrophic. It's like playing with a gun. May not be much chance that you're going to shoot yourself with it, but if you do, the consequences are pretty dire. We're not willing to take a chance that anything would happen that would compromise the water quality down here. Now, we may be mad at Virginia Beach, and we may not like the way we've been treated by Virginia Beach, but, they often say, take the high road because there's a lot less traffic. It doesn't make sense for us to shoot ourselves in the foot trying to prove a point to them if we endanger the water quality down here by not passing a resolution in support of keeping that ban on uranium mining up there. So that's the reason we're doing it. We're not cooperating with them. We're protecting the interests of the people of Currituck County, despite Virginia Beach.
I think it's a matter of principle. They had a disregard for our environmental concerns at the time, and to be honest with you, I was offended when I read and saw on the video that they sent their engineer down here, and he's actually dog and ponied all through the area. And most people in this room probably didn't remember that. Mr. Scanlon and Mr. McCrae probably remember it, and the three commissioners. But the rest
remember it.
But the rest of the people in this county who have moved in here, the tremendous amount of population insurgents, all they know is, well, we need to help Virginia Beach. Well, we don't necessarily need to help Virginia Beach. We need to get something in right. Because, see, what you're doing is you're giving them basically saying that the citizens of Currituck agree to this. It's kind of like when you give a subdivision a permit and you expect the developer to hold to his word, and he's not. And that's happened on multiple occasions. That's happened on our road. So what you're doing is you're basically disrespecting the citizens in Currituck by agreeing to this because Virginia Beach didn't care about us enough. I mean, I was insulted when the gentleman came down here and did his dog and pony. And the other thing I have to say is you have to remember these lights in this room right now, that's coming from uranium-powered reactors at Surrey.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Snowden. Does anyone else wish to address the Board of Commissioners this evening? Public comment.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Etheridge.
I've traveled up and down the repaving job that's been done on 158 quite a lot in the last 3 to 4 weeks. I hope they are not through with that road, because that is a bad job. You come out of Hickory Hills Road, where the transition areas where they stopped one night, that road's falling apart already. At Barco, where you turn to come in, that road, there was potholes in the new pavement yesterday when I came through there. I think anybody that travels that road has seen that, and I think this Board of Commissioners needs to express our concerns about the type of job that was done. Everywhere the asphalt meets, there's a bump. Maybe that was intentional to slow traffic down going down the road. I don't know, but something that's not a good quality job, I don't think, in the long term. Now, I think there's going to be problems, and I'd like to see the board contact our DOT representatives and see what their answers are.
Well, hearing no objection, I would direct the county manager to relay these comments on DOT. I'm sure they are planning to inspect that, but at least make them aware of the concerns and observations that we have.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Idlen, you had some comments.
Yes, I do. Mr. Chairman, board members, staff, and citizens of Currituck County, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for their thoughts, prayers, cards, and calls during my recent illness and recovery. I cannot tell you how much it meant to my family and myself. It really provided me with the motivation to strive to get better each and every day. The Lord has blessed me and given me a second chance in life, and I appreciate it. The heartfelt warmth and support that we received is something I'll always remember. And again, thank you, each and every one.
And we are glad to have you back, and I think by virtue of the fact that you ran unopposed, that shows the citizens of Currituck feel the same way about you. Now I'm going to do some county business. Public hearings. First item, public hearing and action PB 12-05. Currituck County requests to amend the new Unified Development Ordinance to correct and clarify language in the following chapters. Chapter 1, General Provisions, Chapter 2, Administration, Chapter 3, Zoning District, Chapter 5, Development Standards, and Chapter 10, Definitions and Measurement. Now, I bet this is Mr. Woody's.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The county adopted our new UDO on April 2nd of this year. And one of the things we did with that adoption is we gave until January 1st, 2013 for that ordinance to be effective. What we've allowed in the meantime is between April and now, you've been able to choose to submit applications under the old ordinance or the new ordinance. And what we've tried to do is, as we've used the new ordinance, and when we've found typos, clarifications, or things that just don't appear to be working well, we've tried to bring those back to you and get those corrected before the ordinance is effective for everybody on January 1st. So I'm pleased to say this is the last set of those amendments we have. There's 10 of those tonight. I was not going to read through all 10 of those individually. I can certainly answer questions on any of those you have. I'll cover a few that I think are more relevant real quickly, though. Number 23, setback encroachments. One thing we realized is that we wanted to be more, or the county should be more flexible with handicap ramps and allowing those to encroach in setbacks. And you guys know setbacks are the distances buildings are from property lines. We also realized that things that allow, like porches and decks and patios should have a little more flexibility with setbacks, and also things that allow water to infiltrate, i.e. don't create stormwater issues, should have even more flexibility. So you can see what we've done is trying to clean that up a little bit, give a little more flexibility for some of those type features. Item number 27, the PUD transitional standards. That's a complicated section, and basically, and this will be a work in progress for this county. All on the beach, most of our development has occurred as a planned unit development, or PUD. A lot of those PUDs started back in the late 80s, mid 80s, even some in the early 90s, and those have developed over many, many years, and some of those are still developing. We have old master plans that hang down in the office related to those PUDs, but one thing we've done is we've got a new UDO, and we've tried to push everybody towards using this new UDO. but we wanted to be sensitive towards those old PUDs and some of their master plans that exist. So what you see in this is trying to kind of clean up what's called the PUD transition standards. And basically what it's saying is the dimensional standards, the setbacks those old PUDs were developed under, they stay in place. But the development standards such as landscaping, parking, architectural standards, all that stuff in the new UDO, that applies to new development, the PUDs. So there's a higher level the PUDs always have high quality anyway, so I'm not too concerned about them meeting the architectural standards, for example. But the idea is that these PUDs under the new ordinance don't have the use permit requirement anymore. So you're going to see January 1st, staff will begin administratively approving a lot of the development in the PUDs. Trade-off is a higher quality of development is just built into the ordinance. I say that, though, and the one thing that's important in these PUD standards is we did include language that said if applying the new development standards, if those standards have the effect of decreasing the type, density, or intensity of land designations included in the old master plans, then flexibility would be granted to the PUD. So in other words, if they've had a plan on the books since the 1980s that said they can build 100 condominium units on this piece of property, and the new ordinance, because of landscaping or whatever, had the effect of not allowing 100 condominium units, then the ordinance standards would have to be applied flexibly to allow them to have that density that was included in their original master plan. That's a complicated concept. The worst case is if they just can't meet the new ordinance and they don't feel like that it's reflective of the master plan, they can always bring back a request to the Board of Commissioners to amend that master plan for flexibility. So we tried to kind of move the PUDs along, but also acknowledge where they've come from and give them some vesting, so to speak, in those older plans. I think that'll be a good section for us, and that was a difficult topic. Another thing I wanted to cover, and this will be the last thing I'll go over tonight unless you have questions, is we've got design standards, and a lot of that on this corridor will come into play. The idea is that when we have investment, particularly in our commercially zoned areas, that the quality of that investment is at a higher level, which obviously we hope promotes additional economic investment, raises property values, those types of factors. We've had a couple of site plans that have actually come through and got approved under the new architectural standards, and they're not that difficult. But we did in using those, we did clarify a couple of things in our design standards. Real quickly, we didn't actually define sloped roof, so we thought that was a good idea. So we've included the definition of sloped or pitched roof in here. We had some language that, quite frankly, when we started applying, we didn't even understand what it meant, and you'll see we just deleted that. If the language is just too ambiguous for a design standard, we just don't think it's enforceable. We don't keep it. You'll see that's deleted. And another important clarification we made is that we said the building facades that face the highway are held to a standard of having to put in some windows and other facades other than metal if it's commercially zoned property. But we clarified that to say front building facades and facades facing streets. Because remember, the front facade doesn't always face the street necessarily. Sometimes if you've got a facade that faces the street, you actually enter the building on the side. So we clarified that design standards apply to the front building facade and the facade facing the street. Now, those oftentimes are one and the same, but not always. There's some other things in here that I think are more minor in nature. I'd just be happy to take questions on those other items if you have any at this point, and hopefully we'll be ready to go with the new ordinance January 1st.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Woody?
Mr. Woody, I guess you and staff have reviewed all these, and you're perfectly fine with...
I'm sorry, I'm glad you said. We have, the staff reviewed these. We do support these. The planning board, and I apologize for getting it. The planning board also has reviewed these. I think we took 2 meetings on these with the planning board, and they also recommended unanimous approval of these amendments.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval.
Okay, well, this is a public hearing. I need to give a chance to address this.
I'll
open the public hearing. Is anybody here who wants to address this matter?
I've been away for a while.
I know. I usually forget that. Mr. O'Neill usually reminds me.
I'm sorry.
Hearing no one, I'll close the public hearing then. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, public hearing and action, PB 12-18, Currituck County Unified Development Ordinance Administrative Manual. Request to approve the administrative manual for the new Unified Development Ordinance. Now, I assume we all had a chance to read this in the interim because we had postponed it before. And I understand Mr. Woody has some questions in the form of a quiz that he'd like to ask Mr. O'Neill related to the administrative manuals or any of the rest of us.
Throw them at me.
If not, go ahead with your presentation on this.
I'm going to postpone the quiz to another date. I do not have a presentation. I will note that we did bring this to you about a month ago, and it is a lot of information. And the planning board also, I believe, they took 2 meetings with this document as well, and the planning board did recommend approval. What the administrative manual is a fancy way of saying it's a collection of our applications, our submittal schedules, and the checklist. Obviously, if you want to get an application to subdivide your property, you don't have to go in this manual to get it. They're listed individually on the website. But I would hope the goal is that when you want to do a development application, you can pick one of ours up, and it walks you through it so you understand what you're submitting, why you're submitting it. And then also on the back end of it, we show you the items that the planning staff and the other TRC members are going to review on your plan. So if you're doing a big site plan, a big commercial site plan or subdivision, as a developer or engineer, you get the same checklist that the planner or the engineer is going to sit and look at when they review the plan. So hopefully that lets everybody come into these approval processes understanding what they need to do to meet the ordinance.
Any question, Mr. Woody?
No, I'd just like to say thank you because that's what we asked for. Something that would be concise with diagram pictures, if you were, so they knew exactly what to do. Thank you.
This is also a public hearing, so I open the public hearing if anybody would care to comment on this. The prevalent information being that the UDO is 500 and some pages, and the instruction manual for the UDO is a little over 100. So I'm sure all of you have had a chance to review that, but if not, avail yourselves of the resources. But would anybody like to comment?
Whatever happened to making it shorter?
They have pictures. That is shorter.
It is.
I know, but I'm...
All right, for hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Item C, public hearing and action on resolution to approve an application with North Carolina Local Government Commission for financing Phase 3 of the Whalehead Stormwater Drainage Project.
Mr. Chairman, when local governments seek to incur debt, there are 2 criteria. If it's over a 5-year payback or over $500,000, it requires local government commissioner approval. We're here tonight to seek your permission to submit an application on behalf of the Stormwater District at the Whalehead subdivision to move forward with Phase 3 of that project. So in your agenda package, you have the application, again, seeking the approval. There's a series of findings that we are required to make. Number 1 is that this project is necessary and expedient, which it is. It is the next phase of a rather comprehensive stormwater infrastructure installation, which is supported by the Whalehead subdivision, and at the request that we move forward with this. You have to make a finding that this is a preferred manner of financing. We're looking for installment purchase versus bonds. It's actually cheaper to go for the amount of money, for the smaller amount of money we're borrowing. It's actually cheaper to go this direction versus seeking general obligation bond approval. We have to make a finding that it's adequate, not excessive. We will only borrow what the bid actually comes in to show the project cost. We have to demonstrate that our debt management policies and procedures are in good standing, which they are. We are not in default of any debt. You make a finding in here that we are not proposing to raise any taxes associated with incurring this debt. It's important to note on this one that this is a stormwater district. The only folks that are assessed and pay taxes to support this debt are the folks that live in the subdivision. The folks that live on the mainland do not pay anything towards this project. Only those living in the Whalehead subdivision are actually assessed for this. And we also had to make a finding that we are not in default of any payment. The county attorney has reviewed the application. He has made a finding that this is a public purpose to which we can spend funds. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. But again, this is an application requesting us to be able to go in front of the LGC and seek their approval to secure debt.
Any questions or comments from Mr. Scanlon? I'd like to comment from the pictures during the various recent storms that Mr. Weatherly took. It appears that the work has been successful so far.
I can't recall a storm that I have been through, hurricane, nor'easter, or anything, that the roads around the fire station weren't
flooded.
12 to 14 inches underwater, and that was one of the first places we installed the infrastructure, and it remained dry throughout the duration. Now, you saw pictures of some other areas, and they certainly are future phases, but in the areas the infrastructure was installed, it seems to have proven its worth, and I believe the folks in the community are pretty pleased with what's been accomplished.
Excellent. Well, this is also a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing. Anyone who has any questions or comments related to this matter, come forward. Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
So moved to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carried. Item D, consideration action PB07-09, Currituck Reserve, Plan Unit Development. Request for a sketch plan special use permit extension of a plan unit development consisting of 688 units located between Currituck Highway and Tulse Creek Road, north of Guinea Road, and Moyock Township. And this, I believe, Mr. Woody, is simply an extension of an existing permit, which we have granted numerous prior to this.
That's correct. This is similar to the other requests we've had, and I believe we got one more to our next meeting, and we'll be done with these. But basically, it's just an extension of the Currituck Reserve development located in Moyock, in the Moyock Township. Staff has looked at this, and we feel like it meets requirements for extension, and we do recommend approval of an extension.
So moved.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Woody for
All right.
if you can hold off on your vote.
I'll unmove.
Who is the gentleman that's requesting the letter? I've never seen his name before on anything dealing with Currituck Reserve. Our past extensions, I've known the individuals where we have history with them.
It's a gentleman with Armada Hoffler out of the Hampton Roads area. They're one of the developers of the Currituck Reserve project.
So it's Armada Hoffler asking for the extension.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Woody, would you just a brief explanation as to how we got to approving extensions or whatever, the General Assembly?
Yeah, in
just for the public's interest.
Sometime in 2009, following kind of the housing collapse and some of the struggles that the development community was having with keeping projects moving forward, the General Assembly came in and adopted a law, I guess, that basically suspends the vesting periods for local development approval. So in other words, most of the time when you as a board, when you approve a subdivision or some sort of use permit, if no action or no infrastructure is installed, then that approval will expire after generally 2 years. So the General Assembly said you can keep that 2-year local government kind of window of getting something done, but we're going to suspend that clock from running for a couple of years. So basically we had all these process of these permits that were approved, and then because of the General Assembly's action, it was suspended. So they've just kind of been floating for several years. Now that General Assembly suspension is expiring, and what our ordinance does allow, also it allows you, if this board approves a permit, they get 2 years to get it done, but they also have the ability to come in and make a one-time request to extend that vesting another 2 years. So a lot of these projects, while they could generally last for 4 years on the books, they're going to last for 5 and 6 years because of the General Assembly extending the vesting periods. But I think it's generally perceived to be a reasonable suspension because of the problems with financing and the economy.
Thank you, sir.
I have one more question. Are they speaking for the entire development? Because I thought when it kind of slowed down, it went off in 2 different groups. Do they have the authority to speak for the entire 600 and some unit subdivision? Or they
Mr. Etheridge, I was contacted by telephone by the other party last week who was in Florida and said that they also have allowed them to speak on their behalf.
In our communications, the landowners have been fine with the permit extension. This is a bit unusual because you have multiple landowners involved with this one permit.
So I'll move for approval again.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
It's not a public hearing, but go ahead and ask a question if you.
Well, it's consideration and action. Aren't the applicants supposed to be here for that hearing? Okay. The only other thing I had to point out was the 2006-2008 board increased the density on it. That was after Mr. Martin and Mr. O'Neill voted off the board. So you may have an opportunity to reduce density. If you were so.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? New business, board appointments. Appointments to the Nursing Home Advisory Board.
Move to accept the list as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question on the consent it's for the manager. It's in item number, let me see, 4, I believe. Get to it. Resolution authorizing purchase of additional 800 megahertz radio communication systems equipment from Gately Communications and Motorola through sole source purchases. I was just wondering about the sole source piece. I know that was a topic of discussion in the past election, and I'd just like to clarify.
Yes, sir. There's, I guess, several provisions of the statute to how the county government can go about procuring different supplies, materials, equipment that we need, and there's several thresholds associated with that. This purchase falls within a project that we were to formally bid it out, but there's only one vendor that actually will provide the equipment, the only one that makes it. So that does require action by the Board of Commissioners. And the question is, why are we going with this one particular vendor? Well, a couple of years ago, the state of North Carolina made a commitment to build out a statewide backbone of an 800 megahertz system for interoperability so that all jurisdictions can talk to each other in a state of emergency. And they awarded that contract to Motorola. We are now expanding on what they brought into Currituck County so that our public safety agencies can also take advantage of that. And in order for our equipment to be consistent with the equipment that the state put out there, the vendor needed to be Motorola. And Motorola, the sole authorized Motorola dealer in our area is Gately Communications. So you're seeing a sole source of those two companies.
Thank you, sir. Just for clarification, that was all.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Scanlon, first of all, I retired from Motorola, and there was all the municipalities in Hampton Roads got Motorola except the city of Hampton. And all the municipalities could talk to each other except for Hampton. And they were just sitting out there swinging. So the other thing is this, are we going to be able to interact with Hampton Roads on their Motorola system? Is it? I know technology changes, but it's still 800.
Yes, we will.
Okay, that's good.
Any other questions, comments?
I would like to make one comment. On the consent agenda is a resolution of recognition of Johnny Barnes, who after 35 years serving as a member of the Board of Education for Currituck County, he did not run for re-election. And I just wanted to say, talk to Johnny tomorrow because there's a recognition for him being held at Knapp School tomorrow afternoon. As we all know, we've been invited to it, and I won't be able to be there. But he's he was extremely happy with my phone call and with the recognition that's going to take place. And he dedicated, 35 years for the children and the people of this county. And it just says something about the man. He was never opposed.
He's the longest serving school board member in the state of North Carolina.
Yes, he was. And having worked with him and under him, it has been a pleasure. Knowing Mr. Barnes.
I have a resolution here that's been prepared from our board that's going to be presented to him tomorrow night. So,
thank you.
Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question of Mr. Scanlon as well. I'm looking at this East Carolina Behavioral Health Quarterly Monitoring Report, and again, for my own information, is everyone paying into this according to the same formula?
It's my understanding they are, yes.
Well, I look at like Beaufort County, which is about the size of Pasquotank County, and they're paying $173,000, and Pasquotank County is paying $92,000. So I'm looking at discrepancies. If it's based on population, I'm looking at Currituck is paying $60,000 and Dare is paying $70,000.
The My understanding of the formula, it is a per capita, I think it's $2 per capita, plus a portion of the profits generated from the ABC stores. So I think the discrepancy it appears is the difference between the 5-cent bottle tax that goes into
Beaufort County's got a lot of people hitting ABC store.
That's the formula they use.
Well, we must too if we're paying almost as much as they are.
If I may, Beaufort County has a facility that they also help maintain. Pitt County, if you notice, Pitt County is over $500,000, and theirs is. There was nothing to preclude the counties that came in that we joined. When we joined ECBH, the Albemarle Mental Health, they were already paying. They didn't have a formula. Whatever county wanted to contribute, they contributed, and we made them come to a formula so everybody be treated the same. But it didn't preclude those counties from paying what they wanted to pay. There's a floor established, but no ceiling. That's the best way to describe it.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Motion?
Motion for approval.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that concludes the new business, except for Commissioner's report. Mr. Martin, would you like to lead off tonight?
Happy Thanksgiving to everybody in the county, and hopefully if you're going to travel, take your time. Watch out for the other guy. We've just went through an arduous election, and, now we need to put our heads up and look forward. And I know some of us were very disappointed, but, we got to put it behind us and go forward, and want everybody to enjoy Thanksgiving.
Mr. Etheridge.
Just to follow up on what Commissioner Martin said, after this election, we are all Americans, and we should work together for that common goal. And it is Thanksgiving. We should be thankful. And I'll leave you with this old saying, a hog wouldn't go to slaughter if he didn't make a pig out of himself. So on Thanksgiving Day, make sure you can get up and walk away from the table.
Mr. O'Neill.
I want to make one comment on what Mr. Snowden brought forward about the history of the watershed here. Everything he said was 100% correct. And one of the things that I would like for in the near future is there was supposed to be the Corps doing a study of Currituck Sound, and it keeps we get hot on it, and they tell us what we want to hear and go away. But what is the status of that study? And I would like to discuss that a little bit, because that canal in Virginia Beach is flooding the northern portion of, I'm going to call it Currituck Sound, even though it's I can't remember what.
Northwest River.
Yeah. But anyways, it is
North Landing River is what it runs into.
It is allowing a huge salt intrusion into the sound. And the Chesapeake issue, I know there's nothing to be done about that, but I would like to ask that be discussed at a future meeting. And happy Thanksgiving to everyone. And my sincere thanks to everyone who got out and voted and worked on November 6th. Thank you.
Ms. Gilbert?
I just want to remind everyone about the December 13th date for the Moyock Small Area Plan. And also, I wish each and every one of you a happy Thanksgiving, and just count your blessings every day, because we are Americans and we have that right to vote. So, thank you.
And Mr. Petrie.
Happy Thanksgiving to everybody, but while we're being happy, there's a lot of sad people in Currituck County that are without. I would ask you to consider these people when you're doing your shopping. I know the food line is selling these little boxes for $3.99, but God blesses a lot of us, and some people have a tough time, and they've had some tough cards dealt to them. So this time of year when we're giving thanks, let's remember the people that are struggling to find something to give thanks to, especially Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I would ask you to consider that. And one closing thing. We have 3 food pantries in Currituck. We have Moyock. We have Lower Currituck Food Pantry and
Fillmore.
And they're always taking donations. Good time to give.
Good. Mr. Heidler.
As everyone has alluded to, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Please be safe. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy what it's about, family and friends. And like Mr. Etheridge said, don't eat too much. Also, I passed around some pictures. I brought them for the manager. I've been trying to get the boat ramp at Brumley's Landing dredged out, dug out, whatever, for over a year. I had the wildlife resources people there this past summer, took them out in my own boat, and they shot depth findings and this and that and other. You can see what the depth is. So I would ask Mr. Scanlon, I will email him these pictures tomorrow. I'll ask him to please send a letter to them to try to get something done. People down there the other morning, the Fish and Wildlife Service has blinds that they do, which allows hunters from all over the state to put in for and come out. They can't get away. Can't get away from the dock to go hunting. I mean, something's wrong with it. So it just needs to be dug out. And if we can put any pressure on them, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to reiterate the same thing about having a happy Thanksgiving. And I think a comment was made about, watch your diet. And there's a fellow named Michael Pollan that wrote a book called Food Rules that I think all of us should probably go by. What he basically said was eat food, meaning eat stuff that your grandparents would recognize as food, not all this stuff that's put together with all the chemicals in the store. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. Those 7 words give you all you need to know about what your diet should be. I know I went to the emergency room about 3 years ago after Thanksgiving, thought I was having a heart attack, but it was probably the gravy. Now, the day after Thanksgiving is Black Friday, and of course Black Friday is the day where people go out and riot and run over and stampede their neighbors fighting for stuff that they didn't really need anyway right after the day they gave thanks for all the stuff they already had. Remember, buy local. We've got a lot of local merchants that need your support. We've got a lot of folks that could use your help as far as contributions to the food pantries. So keep in the mood of Thanksgiving for the day following that. And then Saturday, the 24th, if you still have room to have a little bit more, down at Jarvisburg, the Great Currituck is going on down at Sanctuary Vineyards, which should be a really nice affair from 12 to 4. It's an all-you-can-eat oysters type thing. They usually do a great job. I'm sure you'd have a great time. And I don't know if many of you are as much as interested in the oyster season reopening as I am, but I bought a quart the other day at Frog Island. I'm going to make some scalloped oysters for Thanksgiving dinner, so I hope all of you will get a chance to enjoy those. Mr. Scanlon.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Chairman, one last thing. The annual Christmas parade is on December 1st?
Yes, sir, it is.
Good point, yes.
Saturday morning, I think, starts at 7:30 or 8.
9, I think.
Somewhere in there,
Yeah.
I will say this, that the local 4-H backpack for kids will have a float in it with a big sign for donations. Thank you.
All right, not hearing any other business, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Drive carefully.